Hey guys, Michael here from michaelsherlock.com. In my previous video, I talked about the winners of 2010, 5 technology gadgets and products that really were worthwhile and really succeeded in 2010. And now, as promised, 5 losers. That's not to say that maybe one day down the road these products can't succeed, but they probably won't. But at this point, they are failures. So let's start off with the Crunch Pad. Oh wait, I'm sorry, the JooJoo. If you remember back, this was the TechCrunch tablet, and Fusion Garage, with the help of basically under the supervision of their CEO, took the tablet away from Michael Arrington and TechCrunch and tried to re-release it as its own. Of course, there was a lot of legal problems with that, a lot of lawsuits, fines, etc. But really, besides all that, and that's really what brought it into the limelight, that sort of, played to the hypometer because everybody knew about it, everybody was talking about it. But when it came down to it, $500 for a plasticky 12.1-inch, tablet from an unknown company compared to, at the time, a $499 Apple iPad, and of course now we've had other fortes into the tablet market, was a complete disaster. Who would ever buy that? I mean, the Crunch Pad really could not succeed, or the JooJoo rather, really could not succeed. And the fact of the matter that there was some shady legal, practices and ethics that happened at the beginning and the inception of this product really, cast it off in a negative light to begin with. Number 2, Google Social. This is actually 2 products that I've wrapped into one, Wave and Buzz. We all know Buzz. It's, their Twitter-esque type of thing, but it really has failed to gain the popularity, which is kind of, a really big shot in the foot for Google, because all the people that already had Google accounts automatically had Buzz accounts, and yet it really didn't take off, wasn't really adopted. And of course, Wave, it was something completely different. But the problem was, and talk about it really, if you thought that concept worked or didn't, that's really not the point of what I'm trying to say here, but it was actually impossible. It could not succeed because it wasn't open to, it wasn't set up to. The way for it to really work was for a lot of your friends to adopt it, and then you could use it. But the problem is, it started off invite only, and slowly, more and more people were invited to try the service. Really, the only way that this really could have succeeded is if it had a huge amount of support at the beginning, because in that case, then people would be like, okay, my friends are using this product, maybe I'll try it too. But the fact of the matter was, no one really used it at the beginning. The concept is kind of out there, and the idea of having everything in the cloud and this one wave of content, emails and everything is pushed into one thing, kind of weird. And of course, like I've mentioned, people really couldn't adopt it because it wasn't available for them to adopt. So, Google Social, fail. Next up, 3D TV. A lot of people say this was a win for 2010. I don't really know how you define wins, but to me, 3D TV is a novelty. Not only is it annoying, but it's also expensive. To adopt the technology, you have to have a new TV, you have to have a new player that supports it, you have to put on the glasses. That's the biggest thing. The only way that this can succeed, really, is when 3D, there's a lot of content available for it. It's widely adopted in terms of television, so anytime you buy a new TV, it'll have support for it. And also, no glasses needed. The only way it can succeed is if you don't need glasses. Even in the commercials, these people look so goofy, and I was reading an article recently, that one company is going to be releasing designer 3D glasses this next year so that you don't look as silly when you're using them. But the fact of the matter remains, if you need to put on glasses to enjoy the content, it's not going to work. We've sort of seen a sort of technology with the Nintendo 3DS. That could be viewed as a failure in itself, but that didn't really make the list because it hasn't come out yet. But the fact of the matter remains, you can see the 3D elements without having to wear glasses. So until 3D television can adopt that, and of course get more 3D content available to the user, that is a failure. Next up, Nokia, an entire company, completely failed. Once the epitome of smartphones, it's had little support in the United States, and its market share continues to dwindle and fail as the years go and months go on. It used to be the big boy on the block. Everybody used to have Nokia phones, and it's still popular in Europe, don't get me wrong, or at least still widely used in Europe. I'm not even going to label it as popular in Europe. But the fact of the matter remains, until Nokia drops Symbian, they will not succeed. And of course, they've had this Mamo. Also, then they merged that with Moblin from Intel, I believe, to make MeeGo. Throw that all out the window. You will not succeed with that. Nokia, I've used several Nokia devices. They know how to make good hardware. They know how to put good camera phones, or they know how to put good cameras into phones, and they know how to make elegant hardware. But the software is just not up to par. Forget about Symbian. Forget about these feeble attempts. I know that you put money into Symbian. I understand that. But you cannot win with Symbian. I'm not saying, maybe you want to become a partner with Microsoft and release Windows Phone 7 series devices. Perhaps Google and release Android things. The fact of the matter remains, HTC, Samsung, these are all hardware manufacturers that use other people's software and are very successful. If you continue to link yourself to Symbian, you will not be able to succeed. This isn't just me talking. The consensus now is Symbian is dated, it cannot come back, and it won't be able to have the support of other operating systems, because iOS has support through Apple's, the Apple network, if you will, the App Store, their little confined region. Android will have its devs, Windows will have its devs, and let's just even stretch it and say WebOS will have its devs. Are people going to want to develop for an additional platform? No. And as we know, applications, let's quote Steve Ballmer here, developers, developers, developers. Unless you have that application support, you are not going to succeed. And, when it comes down to it, people don't want to develop for Nokia, for Symbian rather, because the operating system isn't elegant, it's dated, it's not as fast as it used to be, it clearly isn't as social as the other choices, and it's just destined for failure. Nokia, please, I've been telling you this for years, drop Symbian, otherwise you're going down with that sinking ship. And speaking of cell phones, the biggest tech flop of 2010 is from Microsoft, the Kin. Hyped as a social powerhouse before the launch of Windows Phone 7, I remember making a video in early 2010 about the Kin and saying I was excited to see it. Perhaps this could finally, bring some sort of social aspect to Microsoft, and Windows Mobile 6.5 at the time was not social at all. And at the time, 2010, really we saw social, popping up as a big thing. The problem was sales were abysmal. And why was that? Because the hardware was cheap. The Kin and the Kin 1 and the Kin 2 were not good pieces of hardware. They didn't feel good in the hand. They weren't the most powerful. They weren't the most usable. They weren't the most accommodating and cosmetic. It just wasn't good. And then it got sloppy. They stopped selling the phones. Then they started again. But now we pretty much know for sure that Microsoft is just putting an axe in this boat, because they're turning off the Kin Studio, which is their online cloud. And actually, for Kin to work, you need the studio and the online features that they're disabling. And that's coming to an end January 31st. If you are a Kin user, just as an FYI, users will be able to get a replacement 3G phone from Verizon Wireless. I don't know if it's a smartphone. I don't really know those details. Hopefully they'll be contacting you. Otherwise, you can probably contact Verizon Wireless. But the fact of the matter remains, the Kin is the single most, or basically typifies failure for 2010. It wasn't adopted. It was kind of junky. It never lived up to the hype, and it was killed. It just was not good. There's no two ways about it. Kin 1 and Kin 2 were a completely failed attempt. And when it came down to it, Microsoft said, you know what, this isn't working, forget about it. Let's just work on Windows Phone. Some of these other companies, particularly Nokia, should see, when something's a failure. You got to give respect for Microsoft for identifying a failure and stopping it. If these other companies perhaps did that, maybe they wouldn't be so bad off. But those are my top 5 technology losers, epic fails for 2010. I'd love to hear your failures in the comment section below. I'm Michael Sherlock from michaelsherlock.com. Thanks for watching, and have a nice day, guys.